Hi, my name is Avon. I want to welcome you to the second episode of First Drafts That Glow, a flash fiction writing project. I really enjoyed doing the last one. It's been a while since I've recorded or done any video editing, so kind of the basic nature of that, it'll just get better. I'm finding my footing again. And man, my hair was a mess last episode. So I still think it's a mess, but it's at an awkward length and I'm having trouble with it. So you gotta forgive me. But yeah, I thank you for joining me. If you didn't see the last episode, The Last Vampire had a non-binary lead. I really enjoyed writing it and reading it to you. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, maybe I should script these opening bits out. But anyways, today's episode is called Breakfast Memory. The words for it came from two different sources, one of them an online source and another somebody that I know. Man, I just kind of smushed them together after I threw some words in kind of a pot and was like, here we go. And the story kind of happens when I write these. I never really have a plan or an idea. I just kind of go, okay, breakfast memory, what is this? And I mean, I start out with a breakfast memory and then it just kind of became something else. So I had to go back and do an edit because I straight up contradicted myself towards the end there. And as much as I'm keeping this first draft as possible, overt like contradictions in story and character motivations, you gotta fix that, right? Future stories, I may miss that, who knows? This one's a wee bit longer than the last one by almost 2,000 words, but that's not much, all things considered. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy Breakfast Memory by me, Avon, a First Drafts That Glow short story. The first smell was sweet meat, a cheap sausage smell so thick you could almost eat the aroma. Underneath was the robust coffee brewing blending with the toasting breads. She hated every part of it. Since breaking up with her girlfriend and moving back home, she had been unable to convince her parents to relax on the heavy smells that made it impossible for her to function. The condition is called parosema. It distorts smell and changes how they register to people. A complication of a series of events she kept trying to remember to forget. The memory of breakfast that morning made it all too clear. Living on the surface of Mars used to be harder, she learned in school. The first few generations had to live in modular habitats as they converted the landscape and built massive domes. Now the series of ravine and surface roads are all protected by thick layers of diamond glass printed by the machines that gave rise to a virus that affected more than half the population. The result was a heightened risk of seizures and sterility. Julia was one of the first kids to get the new therapy to try to minimize the effects of the lingering virus in the water and air systems. The one drawback was that it might have gotten worse. When she was 13, she signed up for the human trials against the wishes of her mom and went to Olympus City to get the treatment that would take a year to complete. Her dad filed to get her accepted and Parliament approved it. Everything was going so well through the entire program. She was one of the first to go through, and it had all the signs as having eliminated the risks of seizures and brain disorders, as well as protecting her ability to have kids. Her first day out, her mom and dad lavished her with gifts and love, as well as a belated birthday celebration. The hotel they stayed in had a view of the National Gardens, and she felt like the entire world belonged to her. She remembered her parents arguing as she felt the heavy weight of sleep after the long day of excitement and sweet foods. Her mom seemed so upset. The next day, she woke to the smells her mom called the old-fashioned American morning. Smells and flavors that were not typical in Martian life filled the house, making it feel like the yearly celebration of sovereign Mars. Eating the sugar-laden foods and curious textures of what people thought animal meats were like was always fun. Even the media center projecting flat-moving images with bright colors and bombastic sound effects felt special. She was so filled with joy, she had to go tell her best friends about how well everything had gone and catch up on the past year of gossip and trends. Her dad tried to keep her in the house. His insistence was typical of her dad, and her mom also seemed to want her daughter to stay in the house. She decided that it had been that they missed her so much. She convinced them to let her go and that she would not be gone all day. When she got in the car and told it where to go, she immediately put on her headset to read some of her archived messages and watch some of the clips her friends had sent over the past year. When she felt the car shake, it was too late to do anything. When she woke up, the medical machines had amputated her left arm, and they were doing something to her face and head. She remembered not caring what was going on. They must have given her strong pain-killing patches and killed some of the nerve areas. The next thing she remembered was waking in the hospital pod, smelling something foul. It made her puke. She was surprised her nose was not filled with sour smell of vomit. It smelled neutral, like a clean hand. The smell just outside her nose was still horrible. The medical droid registered her complaint about the smell while it cleaned her up and changed her dressing and medical implants. The doctor that came in explained what had happened and what it seemed she was suffering from. Paroxysma was not common in her world. The combination of the treatment she had received and the damage to her brain from the accident made things complicated. This is when the viral treatments were found to have altered her brain in ways nobody could have predicted. If it was not for the car accident, she would have died from a tumor that would have had a new composition and would have been undetectable until it was too late. She was happy that only a few had gone through the process. So now, she was swimming in these memories, and still furious with her parents for not remembering what her condition did to her and how strong the smells they were filling the house with were. Tapping her right temple, a projection appeared a few feet in front of her eyes. The home screen was still of the woman she was still desperately in love with. Her sly smile and sharp features framed the mass of curly blue-black hair, highlighted with purple eyes. All of it natural. Her name was Tamar, and her family had roots in the Earth's Middle East and Southeast Asian areas. They were part of the community that did not go in for gene therapy or physical adjustments. They were called the people. Julia started to cry. The past week had been terrible, and the things she had learned that brought her home. Julia started to cry. Sorry about that. Julia started to cry. The past week had been so very terrible, as well as the things she had learned that had brought her home. She began to recite under her breath everything she wanted to talk with her mom about. She was worried her dad would be difficult. Working for Parliament made him shrewd, and he never quite liked the idea that his daughter was living in the people's country on the other hemisphere. He never agreed with how the planet was set up. Nobody in Parliament was ever happy, she mused to herself. "Julia!" Her mom's voice rang through the small speaker in the ceiling. "Come get some breakfast." "I'll be there soon," she said out loud, exasperated and curt. "I need to put in a nasal filter and take my meds first." "Oh my gods, mon cher, I forgot about the smell thing." A few muffled sounds and expletives. "Your father is dropping it all in the processor as we speak, and we will send a few airbots around to clean the smell up as much as we can." "Thanks, Mom." Getting out of bed, the screen minimizes before closing. She fumbles with a few small empty boxes before finding one unopened. Pressing her nose to the top, small tendrils reach up into her nose and disappear. After a moment, she hears a chime in her head. Status reading, please. The small gauge shows 99% and green in color. The small gauge shows 99% in a green color. This is why we're here. Update when at 10%. The gauge blinks twice and disappears. Downstairs on the bottom floor, the air was still slightly smoke-filled and again. You see, this is the whole first draft process thing. Like, I didn't go back to edit some of the grammar things, but sometimes I do it on the fly, but sometimes I don't catch it in time. So downstairs on the bottom floor, the air was still slightly smoky and filled with a few flying bots with fans connecting to long tubes. All the windows above water level were opened and the front door tunnel clear and dilated, rushing fresh air in. Julia, my sweet girl, rushing to grab her daughter in a hug and holding her tight. I'm so happy you came to stay with us. I am so sorry we forgot about the smells. Julia hugs back and becomes aware of the small noise her filters make after installing in her nose and throat. I just need to have the filters in before you make any food that smells strongly like that holiday food. You haven't lived in this house for a decade. You haven't lived in this house for a decade, and we forgot, the father's deep voice resonating from the other side of the large space. We got excited. Sorry. It's okay, Dad. Julia looks over the space and notices how few changes have been made, but the entire house still feeling a little alien. Mom, where did you put my old displays? Oh, we loaded all the images from those old displays onto the one over there, pointing to a large panel showing pictures in rotation. We got that to display everything and put most everything else in storage or sent it to recycling. All of your stuff is in the sub-level and safe. I'm not worried about that, Mom. I'm just a little weird. It's just a little weird to not see a screen on every wall and table. Your mother got into the family records and found one of her family on Earth used to live in a style called minimalism. Now hush! Your father hates it. He'd rather we have stuff all over the place. Julia looks over the space again and smiles. You know, this is how Tamar's family is. They don't go for many of the modern machines and services. It sort of feels like my house. Just as she says that, she starts to cry softly. Oh shit, honey, I'm so sorry you guys broke up like that. Come here. Wrapping her arm around her daughter and leading her to the sofa. You only told us that she asked you to move out and would not see you to talk. Whenever you're ready. Julia uses the breathing patterns she learned in school that were supposed to calm you down in the event of a breach in the air system. She did not get the same calm feeling out of the 4 counts in, 4 counts out like she did before needing to wear the internal filters. It did help to stop her from crying, though. Her family told her that because of the therapy and damage to my genetics that I was unfit as a life partner because any combination of our genetics for children would be tainted. The crying started again as she finished the sentence. You were together for 15 years, her dad exclaimed. I remember talking to her father about what happened to you, and he never once in that span of time ever expressed any issues. Julia calms herself and waves the service bot to her. Water, cool, no fragrance or additives. After a moment, the bot returns with a large decanter of water with a drinking glass. After a few sips, Julia takes a deep breath. The people, well, they have a new leader, and recently they've turned to a scary kind of fundamental. So much about the new leadership is just not talked about. Sitting next to his wife, her dad grunts. I've been talking with Parliament about this very thing. It's caused a great divide in the group. There's already a petition for a group calling themselves the community to have a seat since separating from the people. Julia nods. Yeah, Tamar and her mom both were joining them originally. Her dad and uncle were on the fence, but we thought we made a solid argument to not stay with a group that was trying to make those old religious laws a foundation for living. So, what are they trying to do, really? The concerned look on her mother's face deepened. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a second because some of this changed as I finished and I didn't come back to edit this out. So, all right, yeah, a lot of that is, but, anyways, where was I? To what are they trying to do, really? The concerned look on her mother's face deepened. Tamar told me that her dad had been granted a prestigious office and she believes in him now. She wouldn't tell me why she believes in this organization or what the office is her dad has. She just did not mention her mom or anything else about us, just that I was unfit for making a family and needed to leave the house. Julia's shoulders drop lower as she speaks. It was all in a recording. She wouldn't even talk to me. She owes you for contract breach, and her dad starts to say before being stopped. Dad, she already had an advocate settle all the contracts and most of the judgment went in my favor. The coin is in my account, covering all my expenses and investments we shared. Plus, since she was choosing to do this without any counseling or with my knowledge, I got the lion's share. All she wanted was the house and the 3 primary bots. The rest, almost all virtual and physical assets, now belong to me. I have real estate I didn't know she had invested in, and more coin than I knew we had. Looking over her daughter, Julia's mom leans over. That sounds insane. Why would she rush something like that? Could you not make a case to the mental health intelligence that she may be compromised or under a negative influence? No, I tried. Julia gets up, pacing in a small oval, sipping on water between every few words. According to the MHI, since she belongs to the people, the societal contract prevents the Commonwealth or Parliament or any branch of the Union off planet any say on a mandate or action initiated through the office of the people. Her dad stands sharply. Are you telling me the main office of the people divorced you? Yes, Dad. The soft voice of her mom betrayed her feelings. That would be like the Prime Minister declaring a marriage to dissolve. That seems a bit suspect. Mom, it wasn't just us. It was nearly 3 million marriages and unions that were dissolved through the order of the new leadership. All the children, all those not directly born into the people, were given the better cut, if you can call it that. There are millions of people relocating as we speak. It's why I came here in place of finding a new apartment. My entire life is there, but all the apartments and homes, they're owned by the people, and they were instructed not to sell or rent to anyone not fully part of the people. And it's for this cause. Plus, it's what nobody seems to be talking about. Tamar's not the only one that did this, all in a recording. A few of my friends sent me bits showing a near identical video they had been sent. Walking over to a blank space on the far wall, her dad taps 3 times. A panel dissolves, showing a series of bottles and decorative short glasses. He pours 4 different bottles into 2 glasses and slams the first, hands the second to his daughter. I didn't know that part. We are only getting controlled releases of information, and even the new group told us they're unable to comment on much until they get licensed as official. They're terrified of retaliation. Even the people moving out are choosing mostly to go to Union space, claiming they no longer feel safe on Mars. Julia, what will happen now? You're welcome to stay here, but your job is in New Arabia still, right? Not anymore. Both Mom and Dad say, what? All non-members of the people have lost rights to work on that hemisphere. I have to call the office, and her dad is cut off again. Honey, just go, her mom says. You know the Minister of Trade is going to bend your ear off. Kissing his wife on the cheek and hugging his daughter, he quickly walks out the house, tapping his right temple, saying, "I need transport to Parliament Ministers' Meeting Hall now." "Mom, I'm scared." And this all feels like something you see in one of those old movies or read about in history. "I know, honey. Your great great grandmother told me that last conflict on Mars felt like a retro story, too. She said things just needed to happen sometimes, and because people get scared of the status quo, they just get desperate to feel important in a system of planets that feels smaller every generation." "I know, Mom, but I loved her so much." I I do know, Bunny. Let's go get ready for the day and maybe go see some music performances or go to one of the gardens for a big lunch since your dad and I made the wrong kind of breakfast. A few hours later, mother and daughter were both dressed and refreshed. Julia in pants and an old-style cotton shirt with walking pads on her feet. Her mom in a detailed skirt and silky top with similar walking pads. They decided to use the waterways to go to the main social district. The submarine had an opening at one end with glass making up the entire center, capped off with a plasteel arrangement. The seats hovered in place and secured the passengers with a soft hold on the waist and shoulders. The water systems of Mars were one of the few modern wonders of the star system. The entire planet had been fed water through this one massive ocean that surrounded the globe just above the equatorial line. The original plan was to have large lakes and pipelines. A breakthrough in asteroid mining changed that as massive blocks of ice were thrown into the planet's orbit and then brought into the finished ravines and domes as they were secured. Julia remembered the university class and inspired her to go into the field of stellar dynamics. It was amazing to her that humans could work out how to move things in space with such skill and precision. She wanted to be part of the chain of understanding to go further. The distant stars and planets were just out there for people to touch. "Julia?" Deep in her own thoughts, Julia almost does not hear her mom. What? "Honey, you've been distant this whole trip. I thought you might want to talk before we're out in the open around so many people." "Oh, I was just thinking of how impressive people are to have built everything on this planet. I wish the gravity difference didn't make visiting Earth so complicated. I'd love to spend a few years in those oceans." "Your ancestors came from Earth and they had left because of how toxic everything had become. Almost none of them had any positive memories about the oceans or the landscape. They left it behind." She pauses as if to say something and then stops herself. "Why do you bring that up? I've never heard you even mention Earth before." Tamar was talking about Earth the past few months. The new leader of the people claims that they have a right to a large part of the Earth through some ancient claims, and they expect the Earth government to relent and make space open for the Martian settlement. Julia sighs. "They know the science of why none of us can live there. She told me that they all have plans to birth a generation in pods and have them live on a 1G ship that has Martian bots and cyborgs train them and teach." It sounds like they want to move the people back to Earth. "Yeah, I know, I thought so as well, but Tamar and her mom both thought it was more, they weren't interested in it all." "When did the people get back into religion? That just doesn't make sense to me." Julia shrugs. "Best I could understand, the new leader thinks there needs to be closer ties to the home planet of the people. The plan is to ultimately unify the system. Tamar and I both agreed that was not very logical. The leader thinks the technology to make gravity concerns a non-issue will exist soon enough." Yeah. This is why we're here. Some of these sentences are not great. I'm sorry. "The leader thinks the technology to make gravity concerns a non-issue will exist soon enough to make the venture worth it. The religion part is appealing to people that are feeling lost in the modern world. It's a typical cycle." "Well, let's not try to dwell on her right now. Do we need to stop at a med bay for another air filter or a charge cell for your arm before we go to the garden? Julia taps her right temple, and Tamar's face shows up with her smile, making Julia instantly sad. Looking around the projection, she verifies the power status of her arm and the air filter, both well above 80%. No, everything's good for a while, thanks, Mom. The submarine docks and pops open at one end, leading out to a balcony overlooking a giant ravine, hundreds of meters wide and kilometers up and down. A set of stairs leading down to another walkway built onto the side, with shops and large open spaces dug into the rock walls. The hundreds of people walking in small groups, speaking hundreds of dialects, along with the colors of the signs and the small hollow pop-ups in her peripheral vision, feed Julia a small rush of energy. She had forgotten how busy this side of the planet was. The people had rules about ads being sent to your heads-up display, and a noise pollution law that kept people from being too loud. She remembered feeling like it was an oppressive way of life until she got used to it and decided she liked the peaceful walks and not being distracted or tricked into glancing at the icons just out of visual range. Green Mars, Red Earth. The sign was one of the oldest on the planet. It was one of the first subterranean gardens in the solar system, and the first of its kind to eventually be exposed to the surface once the dome technology was able to cover the 20 square kilometers. Excuse me. It was said to be the most beautiful man-made garden in the star system. It had a similar ecological equivalent to tropical jungles of old Earth. There was even a large lake that had a small island for people to host raves and weddings. A few cybernetic horses and some robotic transports were available for people to take to ride to all corners of the garden. Most of the commerce was contained close to the massive entrance, with the occasional eatery and meditation space throughout the rest of the landscape. The only other structure was the original deep mining pod that was once encased in the first shaft dug deep in the rock wall to create this garden. It was a museum to honor the people that had worked their entire lives to help make this a reality. Julia and her mom both agreed to take a horse and ride to the Victorian Cafe. Neither of them had been there in years, and it was the only place to get certain kinds of drinks and sweets on the entire red marble. The cybernetic horses had basic language understanding and understood the destination. Julia and her mom then just talked, holding on to the saddle handles as the horses directed themselves at a steady trot. Mom, I have to ask you something. Anything you want. What happened that day of the accident? You know it happened. The car malfunctioned and you had a seizure. The therapy I went through was supposed to prevent that. Neither you nor Dad ever told me what caused the malfunction, and I never thought about it until Tamar brought it up in her last message to me. The worried look on her brow was obvious as she spoke. I can't know what that's supposed to imply or mean, Julia. We only know that the car had a malfunction, and your therapy could not help the seizures as a result of cranial trauma. But what was the cause of the car's error? I looked it up before coming to the house. There's only been a dozen such malfunctions in the past. There's only been a dozen such malfunctions in the past 200 years. A dozen. Each of those had a root cause that was either direct interference or a statistically improbable breakdown of the many layers of safeguards. 10 out of 12 were by manipulation, and the other 2, I was one, according to the report. Julie, what are you saying? That somebody was trying to kill you? Mom, I'm asking why someone would try anything like that. I'm not going to entertain this. I thought we were out here to have a good day and forget that you are now divorced. Julie instructs the horses to stop. Mom, I've been trying to recall the details of the accident and what the doctor told me about a tumor in my head from the treatment. I looked up the treatment and most of the records are locked up for public health reasons. Bunny, why would you do that? I found that you, as medical consultant to Parliament, were the one that had the records locked up the day I was in the accident, before the tumor was discovered. It was also signed off by Dad and Tamar's uncle. Well, your dad and I have been working with Parliament since before you were born, and I understand that Tamar's uncle was the people's representative for only a few short years. The worried look overtakes her voice as she talks. Listen, Bunny, let's just go get some drinks and sweets and talk about it on full bellies. Tell me, I've waited this long to ask. I knew asking Dad in the house was not going to work. Those bots monitor everything. Julia, you're worrying me. What is this? Are you just acting out? You know I'm not your enemy. No? You sure? I'm asking questions because my life is falling apart. It looks like you and Dad knew Tamar and her family before we met. It looks like you and Dad did something to me, and it went wrong. I get the feeling something is just not right with what I know to be the truth, and I'm only now seeing it all. She pauses for a wave of tears to swallow back. Tamar didn't just break up and divorce me, Mom. She separated me from everything I built as a life. Breaking into tears, she slumps and slides off the horse to kneel on the thick grass. Getting off her horse, her mom sits on the grass next to her. What is it you're not saying? Just tell me, Mom. What have you not told me? What did you two do? Bunny, we love you, and your relationship with Tamar was a surprise to all of us. It's not something we expected. So many members of the people are critical of those with defects and cybernetic brain augments. I honestly thought the two of you would grow old together. Julia begins to cry harder for a moment before sucking it all in. It's never going to happen now, is it? Why would you say that? I'm sure the new leadership will settle down and you eventually can come back. No, Mom. That's not going to happen. Standing, Julia's mom's voice grows darker. What do you know? Mom, where were you born? When was I born? When is the last time you mentioned anything about me before the accident? Julia looks up to her mother with puffy eyes and a reddish nose. I think you're having a breakdown, Bunny. We need to get some food in you before your sugar levels crash. Reaching down to pull her daughter up. Now come on, get back up on the horse and let's get to the cafe. Standing suddenly, Julia taps her right temple. Hack subject directly in front of me. Activate Medusa and isolate. Panic fills her mother's face. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Quiet, Mom. Julia looks over the horses. Open privacy shield on both mounts. Isolate and mute all ears and eyes. A double pulse in one of the windows displayed in front of Julia confirms the orders and the total lockdown of her mother's body. Mom, did you ever wonder why most of the people in the Commonwealth do not go for cybernetic implants in the spine or brain? Bunny, I don't know what you're doing, but this needs to stop now. It's because of what you're going through right now. The hacking of medical systems is nearly impossible, unless you have a large part of your brain integrated with an equal system. Julia, listen to me. Your grief has caused a malfunction in your brain implant. Release me and I will not let security know what happened. We'll just go to a medical pod and have them fix you. A tear starts down her cheek as the awkward position she was locked in begins to strain her organic body parts. Oh, nothing is wrong, Mom. I was hoping you would tell me what was going on with you and Dad. It looks like Dad heard what he needed to from me and went to set the rest of the plan up. Did you know I found out why the medical teams actually took out part of my head and why they took my arm? Oh, Bunny, why did you think I came home? Tamara made sure that I am millions of made sure that I am why did you think I came home? Tamara made sure that I and millions of others had a chance to leave before it all started. Is that why everyone got a better legal arrangement? Is that why so many left to union space? Her voice uneven and hoarse. Mom, I found out that the treatment I was subjected to was not what Parliament was told. I found out what you did, and that Dad is actually a monster, and you're not really human anymore. What are you talking about? I never went in for any kind of conversion or installing of wetware. Mom, how did I just make you immobile? Julia begins to cry again. I think you were human before. I think you were human before I went in for treatment. They scooped out your brain and replaced your entire self with something new. Dad told me my brain trauma was why I remembered you differently. That's a lie. He had you change because you found out what he was actually doing and you tried to stop him. Bunny, I have no idea what you're talking about. I am your mother. I gave birth to you. We had to try 4 times. The virus was stronger then, and you were a miracle for us. I'm sure all of that is true, Mom. What is also true is that you died while I was in treatment, and most of your brain and body was replaced. You were recording everything up to the point I froze you in place. I'm sure Dad's on his way now. He will take some time to get here. What is it you think we did, or are doing? Her voice begins to slur slightly. We're done talking. Tamar and I worked on my upgrades to get more done than shutting down one cyborg. I'm trying to save people. Looking over the frozen face, Julia bites her bottom lip. Wiping her eyes clear, she shouts, Why do you not know what you are? Do you understand how much this hurts to know that the thing I called Mom since I was a kid is a doll? Her left eye twitches and her chin moves up and down out of sync with the lip movements and words, the voice sounding more like a weak signal transmission. I love you, bunny. All the activity in the face stops. The mouth keeps moving for a moment, producing a series of beeps and a soft klaxon before going silent. The skin starts to grow pale before the eyes roll to show all white. Julia watches the figure gently brushing the tears as they hit her cheeks, her nose trying not to make the noise while she tries to calm herself with a slow inhale. After a few moments, she taps her right temple and stares at the picture of her love. She falls to her knees and cries. She assumes it's been a few hours since her dad got the alert of what was happening. She wasn't sure how many people would be after her, but she knew that they could not create a panic in the public, so it would have to be a subtle group of people to come get her. She expected her dad to be with them. He would expect to have the upper hand, she thought to herself. Cleaning off her hands, the feeling of guilt was hard to shake as she looked at the body of the hybrid machine that was her mom. The logic of it told her that the person that was her mom died a long time ago, and that this thing was just using her bones and face to roleplay. Still, Julia felt terrible for having to extract parts of her cyberbrain and spine. She needed the software and memory files if she was to succeed. The privacy screen the horses put up rang loudly. The bodies of the horses was inside the screens and had been still. The knocking on the outside made the heads move to look at Julia. No, remain sealed until I order it. The heads went back to neutral positions as the knocking continued. The voices on the other side were hard to make out through the screens. She heard shouting and the thudding steps of crab tanks. Knocking gave way to scratching before stopping. It began to get warm. Looking around, Julia collected herself and made sure everything she extracted was secure in the upper part of her left arm. She checked the pads on her feet and set the texture to sports. The bottoms of the pads changed slightly to a spiky texture in place of the rounded pads. She did a few stretches and took a few deep breaths. Okay, here we go. Tapping her right temple, the display comes up with a quick dismissal of the home screen. She quickly browses through several chains and sets a few to activate. She inhales deeply as she accesses her body tech and makes sure everything reads green. Her right knee implant was the newest. She had not trusted how it felt. She lingered on the variance in the heat exchange of what felt like forever. A bright red flash on the left of her display snapped her back. The alert showed her where the shield would open first. She jogged in place, shaking out her arms. Okay, activate Medusa chain and send to any system that approaches me or focuses on me except the designated subject. Only link subject if he conforms to the other targets. Confirm. A shadowy head with snakes for hair appears at the center of her display. It flashes twice, bright green before fading out again. The shield cracks open as one of the horses cries out and collapses. The two people pulling on either side of the tear seem unaffected at having torn a horse in two. Their hands and arms looked more akin to construction equipment and had faces to match. She couldn't be sure they were human. Just beyond the opening was the familiar glow of a security fence. Julia wondered how much space they had closed off and how they were explaining it. She could make out a dozen figures, all pointing right arm. This is why we're here, right? Julia wondered how much space they had closed off and how they were explaining it. She could make out a dozen figures, all pointing right arms into the opening. Smiling, she walks out, standing tall. Fire! Her dad's voice, sounding nervous, already shouts. Damn it! I said fire! They can't, Dad. Julia walks over to the person at the center of the troops, looking over them, watching their eyes follow her. They've all been paralyzed. I wrote a program and called it Medusa. Like it? It'll stop all spinal communication and takes over all cyberbrain functions. Her dad moves to touch her. How? How did you do this and why? What happened to... Stepping out of his reach, he quickly looks around at the security fence. Dad, I know what you have planned. As to what happened to your contact, he died at the hands of the People's Police when they found out that it was another puppet you created. How could you have killed Tamara's uncle like that? Or Tamar's uncle like that? How can you kill so casually? Brow furrowed, his voice slow. Julia, if you continue, you will not survive this. I can forgive you for what you did to your mother. Grief and fear is powerful, I know. Stepping just in his arm's reach, she looks into his eyes as hers begin to water. You can forgive? What kind of monster kills his own wife to keep her silent and then turns her body into a puppet? It would have been better to kill her. You needed a mother after going through the treatment. Bullshit. She found out what you were going to do to me and the entire population of New Arabia. Does the Prime Minister know what will happen? Is he aware of how deep your monstrosity goes? Julia, you would never understand. You think those people are equal to us. They come from a place on Earth that was constantly at war and an oppressive governmental structure for hundreds of years. The new leader, he wants to reclaim some of that history, and they've been planning to take over this side of Mars in the process. I'm doing this for our people. That's insane. You have no idea what they're really like. The new leader wants to live in peace and wants to expand communications between Earth and Mars and the rest of the system. We have no plans to attack anyone. You're being naive. You became indoctrinated. You know those 3 million that were forced to leave their homes and given the lion's share of wealth from this separation? It wasn't just because it was the legal thing to do. Litigation could have tied up coin and property for decades. It was because the leaders of the people did not want the families to suffer when the Commonwealth attacked. That is why most of them went to the Union space. How could they have planned such a move without us knowing? You're not very good at lies, daughter. They did that to show how much they hate us. It is a provocation. His voice shakes at the end as it gets louder. No, Father. They're just smarter than you wanted to believe. It's how I can lock up all your troops. It's how I've been hacking your own access while I've been talking. It's how I will release the documentation on the virus you grew in my brain and bones while I was in treatment. This is how the Commonwealth will collapse, and the death of the woman I love, and my death will be worth it. You can't. His voice and arm stop suddenly as Julia steps out of his reach again. Dad, I'm sorry. It must be like this. I'm ashamed that I'm your daughter. You never said Tamar was dead. How did she? Living with me. The mutation in the viral strain your people put inside me activated, possibly around the same time you activated the viral bombs. The people have very good medical scanners, and I was isolated quickly, but not before infecting Tamar and a few others. Julia stops as if reading something. Looks like I have access to the missile command codes now. I've locked out the Prime Minister and all of the military. That's impossible. The size of the chain structure and encryption rotations, but I have a fully integrated cyber system, and the upgrades I've gotten are truly impressive. Crying and gasping. That kind of processing is going to be too much for an organic system to take. You're going to die if you keep that up. Please, we can fix all this. I don't want to lose you. His voice and mouth shake. I don't believe you. A part of me wants to. I know you would rather the entire population of New Arabia die. My death would be a blessing. I was crafted as a tool, not a daughter. What are you going to do with the bombs then? They'll be crashing into the main city centers of the Commonwealth soon. The leaders of the people have enough of my genetic material to build antibodies, and the data I just extracted from your vaults is now public information. Even the Union can review it. So, this is how it goes. All that planning. His voice enters a near whisper. Yes, Dad. All that planning, brought down by a girl you thought you could use as a tool. All because you needed to be the only power on the planet. How very 21st century of you. His voice starts to sound before his head falls forward, followed by his body to the ground. Julia looks up as she jumps out of the security area. An alert pops up reading her air filters and arm power near finished. She smiles. At least I'll die without smelling bad things. She sprints to a lakeside, laying down, looking up to the diamond dome. She taps her right temple and the home screen pops up, looking brighter with the crystal backdrop. I love you, and I'll see you soon. The shattering diamond dome in the distance moved Julia up from the ground slightly. It had landed a bit sooner than she expected, and the cracks began to shower shards on her. Closing her eyes, she remembered the last time she woke next to Tamar and how they kissed each other. She thought of how wonderful it would be to kiss her again. Well, outside of some of the, kind of flubs and just kind of awkward sentence structures and stuff like that, I think that was a really good story. Like I said, it didn't turn out exactly the way I thought it was going to. When I started out, I had originally made it that the people were the ones that were going to attack the Commonwealth, and then I had the idea that her mom and dad were, not quite who she thought they were. And it made a bit more sense as I started writing, or as it went. Like, part of my writing process is, in a lot of writers actually that I've discovered, the characters kind of do their thing, and we can't really tell them what to do. And if we try to make them do something else, it just ends up not working. But I think I might come back to this one just to flesh it out a little bit. Make it a little bit more robust and kind of fix some of the inconsistencies that I noticed as I was reading it there. But, until then, I'm going to write another flash fiction story. I encourage you to visit me at ko-fi.com/nailsthatglow. That's ko-fi.com/nailsthatglow. You can also visit me at nailsthatglow.com. Also find me on Twitter at FirstDraftsGlow. I want to thank you for watching episode 2 of First Drafts That Glow, Breakfast Memory, and I'll see you next time.